campus at Georgetown University in Qatar. I am grateful for the community we will build together as part of the YPS Fund. We aim to build a community which will support the excluded majority of young people and peacebuilders who are on the front lines of conflict. Young people are co-shapers and co-investors of this fund and will work collaboratively with other stakeholders and partner organizations to move away from a culture of competition to a culture of growth and collaboration. The purpose of this webinar is to raise awareness and to invite you all to join the community. Today, the YPS Fund goes public, which also means that we are transparent from day one. In today's webinar, you will hear different perspectives, from experienced professionals to young peacebuilders. What does the current peacebuilding landscape look like? What are its challenges and limitations? And how does the YPS Fund address these challenges and, in a way, disrupt the system? We have an exciting set of panelists today who are all experts in their field and will share their expertise. We have Sarah Smith from Dag Hammarskjöld Foundation, Alvina Alametsa, one of the youngest members of the European Parliament, Achalake Christine Lake with Local Youth Corner, Cameroon, Christine Odera with Commonwealth Youth Peace Ambassadors Network, Maya Ayazi with Search for Common Ground, Elishka Yelenkova, our co-partners with UNOI Peacebuilders, Viridul Upadhyay, the Asia Coordinator for UNOI, and of course, Sraji Preli with Search for Common Ground also. Today's discussion is taking place under Chatham House rules, and this session will be recorded. To get us started, I would also like other members of the audience who have not introduced themselves yet to also send in their name, their country, and the organization, and to keep the conversation going in the chat. Let's leverage Zoom technology and be a part of this online yet global community. As participants introduce themselves, I would like to kickstart today's conversation by inviting Sarah from Dag Hammarskjöld Foundation to share the state of the field in financing youth peacebuilding. What does it look like today? Sarah, your insights and expertise are most welcome to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Khushbu. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. As Khushbu said, I'm Sarah Smith with the Dag Hammarskjöld Foundation in Sweden. And the foundation has been involved on youth peace and security, but has also worked to advance peacebuilding financing more broadly. And more recently, have been really looking at the intersection of this work and working to map some of the funding mechanisms available to specifically youth peacebuilders. So today I will be unpacking what financing for youth leadership looks like today and highlight some 5 main funding mechanisms or how money is distributed and delivered to organizations and individuals. And this is really providing a snapshot of key mechanisms and challenges, and it's certainly not an exhaustive mapping of all the funding mechanisms, challenges, and opportunities in the youth-led peacebuilding space. And I know that other colleagues will get into more detail on that later on in the discussion. And before I get started, I just also wanted to thank Ebba Berggrund, who interned at the foundation in the summer of 2020 and really conducted a lot of this research. So much of what I'm presenting here today is really due to her fantastic work. And I know that some of the challenges will be highlighted later on in the discussion, but I think I just wanted to preface my intervention by just saying that I think by highlighting that peacebuilding as a whole, and particularly to financing of local civil society, really remains underfunded. And many of the challenges faced by young peacebuilders are also faced by civil society more broadly. And yet youth often face specific cultural barriers and distrust by governments and NGOs and are seen often as unreliable or unable to carry out meaningful peacebuilding work. And I think this relates to the continuing narrative of youth where they're seen as still as beneficiaries rather than leaders and partners. So what are the main financing mechanisms for young people. Although many of these 5 mechanisms are utilized by both youth and non-youth, young Peacebuilders seem to rely more on earned income, mainly through membership fees and donations than non-young Peacebuilders. On the other hand, grants appear to be less of a common funding mechanism for young Peacebuilders. And grants are really the backbone of the donor system and plays a really important role in financing peacebuilding more broadly. But for young Peacebuilders, we see that grants tend to be both inaccessible, offered on an ad hoc basis, and hard to manage and report on, and with little possibility for adjustments throughout implementation. At the same time, we've seen that young Peacebuilders do rely on small and micro grants, so under $1,000 US, to pilot specific activities, while medium grants, $1,000 to $2,000 US, tend to be provided to organizations that might be considered by the donor community to be more established with longer term projects and programs, and with larger grants being even more uncommon. And some of these grants are distributed through local and national NGOs who serve as middlemen. Participatory grant making, which I think we'll get into later on, has become increasingly visible and talked about in the grant making space. And this is really about incorporating the constituencies, in this context, young people, in the grant making process. In terms of donations, most donations are based on voluntary contributions from friends, family, and community members. And young people are often using these donations to fund specific activities and related costs. In terms of crowdfunding, there seems to be, young people are not necessarily using the crowdfunding in the traditional sense, in that they're not reaching out to a wider global community. And partly this is due to barriers that young Peacebuilders face in accessing some of these more formal crowdfunding platforms, including bank accounts not being accepted, et cetera. But we do see that young Peacebuilders are using online platforms such as Facebook to really boost outreach to the community and gain donations that way. Earned income is something that is common in some contexts, but not in others. And we've also seen examples of youth running for-profit ventures with profits that they gain from these ventures invested into peacebuilding activities and programmings. And then finally, community financing seems to be less common among youth Peacebuilders. But it's really, I think, a really decentralized financial approach to funding, where the goal is to involve the community in financing activities, organizations. And it's rather, it's an approach more so than a mechanisms. And I think that we've seen, including through the online platforms, that young Peacebuilders are accessing their communities and doing outreach in that way. So I think my time is already up. So thank you so much for your time, and please let me know if you have any questions either in the chat or I'd be happy to if you send me an email to answer that way.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was an excellent summary of the state of the field. And what you mentioned also highlights the tremendous progress we have made, but it also highlights the long road ahead in the field. And I particularly like your point about how there's a need to have more community financing for Peacebuilders and how it's important to support youth leadership meaningfully in that way. Before we move on, I would also like to acknowledge all the Youth Peace and Security Fund ambassadors who have joined us today. Thank you so much. And we would like to expand more on what Sarah mentioned and also more on how we are building a community in the sections to come. With that, I would now like to take you all to Cameroon and Kenya to hear from Achalake and Christine to understand what does youth financing look like today from a recipient perspective. Achalake, I invite you to share your work. Your insights are very welcome to the discussion.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christian Achalige, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I'd just like to start by saying that to me, this is a dream come true because financing is a big challenge. Resources for young people is a bigger challenge every day, especially that we are the forefront of providing solutions. The kind of risks that sometimes we undertake, the kind of threats that sometimes we receive for the kind of work that we do, sometimes we feel very frustrated because funding is not available and we don't receive the kind of support which is necessary. Now, my perspective, which I'll be sharing, is a perspective which is informed by my experience of serving with the Commonwealth, leading one of the leading youth peace building networks within the Commonwealth, the Commonwealth Peace Ambassadors Network, and every day talking to my peers on the field, from India to Kenya to Bangladesh to the Caribbean, and they shared the same challenge: having access to funding, especially when it comes to amplifying their work. Just like the previous speaker said, mobilizing resources locally from family members can work, can pilot, but how do we amplify these efforts? And I feel that this process puts young people at a very delicate position, because when we are not able to amplify our efforts, not because we don't want to, not because we don't have the energy to do, but because we lack the resources, it takes us back to where we have been for a long time, where we are only seen as troublemakers. Now, in the process of young people who are trapped in conflicts, they have the resources to get it done. The challenge is that for majority of young people who are passionate, who are risking their lives to build peace, they do not have. At the end of the day, what happens is our efforts are not seen, our efforts are not amplified. I take, for example, in Cameroon, we have been working around prison rehabilitation. It has been so amazing, so nice. For 4 years, we've been running, 2 years of funding and 2 years of sustaining without funding. But the amount of impact that we are receiving, despite how many institutions talk about this work we do, from UNDP reports to media and all of that, the funding still does not come. My question is it that stakeholders do not trust us? But I feel that issue of trust is very important. But I think donors and stakeholders need to do their homework to do assessment. So many of us, youth-led organization, we do not have support because sometimes stakeholders feel that we are not credible enough. But try to check our finances and see. And even when we are young people, we've always craved for capacity building and collaboration. So in my perspective, from what I've been able to see, I think that one of the key things that stakeholders and donors need to focus on is to strengthen mentorship around financing. By this, we've had an experience most recently with the US Embassy, where the US Embassy in Cameroon funded a project which we are implementing in collaboration with Search for Common Ground. And Search for Common Ground is involved in this process to train us and prepare us for us to meet up with financial management, perspective, programming, and others in order to prepare us. And in all of this conversation, one of the things I could see was that it was very transformative, in that we have learned a lot. We are much more ready to work with bigger funds and resources. So I think that the whole issue about, they will ask you to provide an audit statement. Now, you don't even have funding to do projects. How do you have funding to do audits? A bigger challenge. Sometimes we are asked to have a track record, for 2 years, show previous funding which you've had. If no one has ever given us funding, how do we have a track record? And that's why the whole micro grants are very important. I accept that we could start for micro grants, but donors also need to ensure that this progression is respected. These are the challenges which young people face every day. And sometimes it makes them to question, because for some of our governments, we've forgotten about them because it's patriarchal. They want to work on the big movements and all of that. At the end of the day, we are still the ones who sometimes are taking as local implementing partners to go to the field, to go to the hotspot, to speak to our peers. But why can we not be given the support which is guaranteed and requested? I take, for example, if we have a project funded with a with a UN agency, in the process, young people will be brought and, okay, we'll provide you funding. but the funding which young people receive will not permit them to use an air flight to fly from where they have to work to another place. But UN workers will be able to fly. The resources are not just about not being available, but sometimes I feel that it is not distributed equitably for young people to feel that their efforts are very credible. And many times when I speak with our peers, when situations of this happen, they feel discouraged. It's because we are doing it for our countries, because we are losing people. I tell you, doing youth peace and security work in a country which is war, it is very complex. When you are threatened one time, you will think 20 times before you act, but we cannot stop. But for us to continue, I think stakeholders must understand that they invest. Now, I want to conclude with my recommendation. The first thing which is very important, if donors consider that youth organizations, some do not have the capacity to manage big funds, I would suggest that they provide funding through a collaborative effort where stakeholders are matched. I just give an example of what we are currently running with Search for Common Ground. It's very effective. We are building our capacity and we are getting ready. Another recommendation, multinational organizations setting up youth networks. It's very, very important that while we are setting up this new youth network at a centralized level, there's the need for funding to be decentralized so that we have activities, we have impact at the grassroots. Very important. And my third recommendation is around strengthening the capacity of organization when it comes to financial management and others. It is very important that while we are advocating for resources to be allocated for young people, at the same time, the process should focus around engaging young people to comply with due diligence and many others, because so many times we've been kicked out of processes of funding because we don't have this. And sometimes our hands are tied and we cannot do more than that. So I think these were the thoughts which I wanted to share. And these are perspectives coming from Cameroon. These are perspectives coming from young people that I've worked with, and we keep having them, and it is stifling our efforts, our passion, and everything which we've given for peace and security within our communities and our countries and the world in global. So, I mean, these were some of the thoughts which I want.
Thank you so much, Achalake. Really powerful thoughts and something that we all have to think about. And now I invite Christine to build on that and to share her thoughts and insights.
Thank you so much, Kushbu. My name is Christine Odera, and I am the Global Coordinator for the Commonwealth Youth Peace Ambassadors Network. And just like Achaleke has said, it is saddening that in most times when conference calls are put out, young people are literally asked to pay either for their flight tickets or their accommodation, while some people end up joining these conferences and everything is paid for, fully catered for. So why are we experiencing double standards while we are the people doing the majority of the work? Why are we experiencing the double standards when at the root cause of all that is happening, we are needed in that conversation? They need to hear our voices. So as young people, this is an opportunity and a chance to not only show what we have been able to do, but to be recognized by the efforts that we've put. 94% of youth organizations are led through volunteerism. So where is all this money that is put under youth peace and security initiatives? So we see this as an opportunity to fill the gap in funding and financing youth initiatives, not only globally, but where it matters in the community. As SAIPON, we bring a diversity of complementary of all these efforts, because we work from the global to the regions to the nationals to the grassroots, the community where these changes are usually felt and seen. But because young people do not have the mechanisms to apply to these grants, to access these grants, because let's face it, we have the people who always get these funding, and we wonder why, because they have understood the system. So how then do we make sure that these barriers of accessing these funds are cut? How do we make sure that the young peace builders who are coming into the field get to know and to be mentored on how to access not only the micro funding, but also the macro funding, to be able to sustain not only the projects, but also themselves? Because let's face it, we put ourselves on the line to make sure that our communities are safe. A lot of young people are coming out as agents of peace, but they themselves are not feeling safe. They're not feeling safe creating safety. So we need to look essentially closer to how we develop this funding mechanism. And for the first time, the Commonwealth has actually created a section on youth, peace, and security. And we're hoping that this is a conversation that a lot of the stakeholders are going to use to findings that can champion their commitments to supporting the Youth, Peace, and Security Fund. Secondly, we also have, for the first time, a lot of organizations coming to create mechanism. We've seen like an organization like the USAID going down to the grassroots. So how do we make sure that we harness all these efforts? And the Youth, Peace, and Security funding is one of the efforts to galvanize all these efforts and not work in silos, because that's another barrier we are facing as young people, where some people only form and meet when there's money, and then when there's no money, they go away. And they form such a tight bond that you, as a young peace builder who's just coming up, who does not have a bank account, for instance, you're not able to access some of this funding. So as SAIPAN, we're also looking forward towards the Heads of Governments Forum, because we usually have the Youth Forum ahead of the Heads of Governments Forum. And we're hoping to use that platform to create more discussion on stakeholders and supporting the Youth, Peace, and Security Fund. Because we need everybody to come into the table. We need everyone to start talking about this, and we need everyone to bring into this cup. And so as I finish, as SAIPAN, we commit to make sure that young people are capacity built and are able to know how to access this funding. Because it's one thing to have the fund, and it's another to know how to access this funding. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you for those powerful thoughts. And now I would like to invite Alvina Alametsa, the youngest member of the European Parliament and a prominent youth leader. I invite you to share your thoughts with us on what are some of the barriers young people face, specifically with regards to the need for innovation in financing youth leadership and how to increase political commitment to funding youth. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's very nice to join you all, and thank you all for joining the discussion on this important, crucial topic. I also very much respect the speakers before me. You had very excellent ideas and points. And as everyone has pointed out, there are many obstacles for the project to get funded, and also for the UN resolution on youth, peace and security to become fully implemented adequately. So this is why we are here today. Well, as a member of parliament, I have noted how many of my colleagues also lack knowledge of the whole topic. Sometimes I also have got a personal reminder of this, such as once when the guards stopped me from letting to enter the committee meeting of Foreign Affairs Committee, insisting that I cannot be a member of parliament despite my official badge, apparently because of my young age. So we still face a lot of concrete challenges, but globally, young people face much, much greater challenges than I ever do. And this is why I want to be an ally for all of you and to push for these topics. There is clearly a need for more innovative solutions to funding UPS projects. These solutions should take into account the needs of the young people, their projects, and the situation that they are in. And the example that this Youth, Peace and Security Fund is setting as having as young people themselves as co-funders and co-shapers of the fund is very inspiring. And I very much encourage this approach. Right now, many funds from the public sector tend to be heavily regulated with a long list of requirements. And basically, these requirements for the applicants are an obstacle for most. The public institutions must be willing to change as the world around them changes and be responsive to the needs of the communities. And I think that distributing funds, for example, through one coordinating body that simultaneously provides capacity support to local actors is one of those means. And this is an idea that the UPS fund uses, and I hope that the fund can, in its work, show a great example for other actors, including the public sector. And as policymaker, I want to emphasize that while it is very, very important to have these new funding streams, there is also a need for political recognition of the topic and the challenge that we have at hand. And this has to be translated into policy and programming decisions. Right now, unfortunately, there is a lack of recognition among decision makers, which I have seen clearly in the European Parliament. Even with those who in principle support the idea of youth empowerment, the Youth, Peace and Security Resolution is not often seen as an important aspect of any given policy or strategy. And this means that most conversations will sideline this issue, if not specifically pushed by someone. So this is something we all have to do. Because after explaining the idea of youth, peace and security, the decision makers can usually see the importance and value behind supporting young people as advocates and enablers for peace and security. And there just needs to be a lot more awareness raising. But this is something that we are all working on, and I'm really happy for all that cooperation. There needs to be a collaborative push for the youth, peace and security to really be mainstreamed as an idea. Lastly, I hope that the Youth, Peace and Security Fund would be coupled with strong policy advocacy so that the decision makers will understand the impact that young peace builders have in their communities globally and the need to support that with appropriate funds and policy frameworks. And I am myself committed to advancing just that. Thank you all so much for your great and inspiring work, and I'm really looking forward to staying in touch with all of you. Have a really nice day today.
Thank you, Elvira. Your commitment and everyone else's powerful words today are inspiring. And that's exactly the kind of energy that we need to kickstart the YPS Fund. So what is the YPS Fund? And how are we going to address these challenges? And in order to explain that, I invite Eliška and Mridul to specifically talk about these questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khushbu. I'm going to start with emphasizing some of the needs that led us to co-create and start the Global Youth, Peace and Security Fund. I'm going to probably summarize some of the points that were made by previous colleagues. So the need for this fund really arises from the fact that there are still way too many young people, youth groups, youth-led organizations that are falling through the cracks of traditional grant processes. Young people and youth groups, or in any form that young people choose to group themselves, are still asking for more flexible and accessible funding, but also for a change in funding mechanisms and also for a shift in power relations. In order to increase youth ownership and to recognize the vital role that young people have played in youth, peace and security and in peace building overall. This fund seeks to support the excluded majority of young people who operate with a budget of under $10,000 annually, who do not fulfill traditional donor requirements. Another need for the fund is to have a dedicated space for trust building between donors, adult partners, and young peace builders. Intergenerational dialogue and trust building are some of the key outcomes of the Youth, Peace and Security Fund that we're hoping to achieve. Another need is inclusive decision making and ownership of the fund by young people. Young peace builders will be among decision makers and not only regarding the fund dissemination. They will occupy at least 50% of all governance structures. The larger idea of the fund is that we're building a network of young people, donors, adult partners ready to challenge exclusionary funding systems and structures, supporting youth and their projects in the long term, moving away from a transactional relationship to a trust-based relationship where multi-year funding supports the growth of youth-led peace-building work. The essence of the Youth, Peace and Security Fund is not the accessible funding aspect per se, but the collaborative action for collective impact. Collaboration, not competition, is what will define the fund. By building this community, we're aiming to change people's mindsets about funding and proposal making. This aspect of community building will make sure that there is more trust built between the different actors, between donors, between young people, between adult partners, but also will provide mentoring, an opportunity for skill sharing, as well as the pooling of resources and expertise. The first 2 years of the fund will serve as an incubation period, during which we will collectively shape and set up the different structures that need to be in place in order for the fund to become independent. We will also pilot a proof of concept in one conflict geography that Myrtle will explain later on. When I say we do want all of you to come on board. We do ask that you contribute your time, your expertise, and you help us raise funds. The journey is going to be very long, and it's a huge risk that UNOY and Search is taking. Traditional funds would already have made many of the decisions regarding disbursement of funds, regarding the governance before going public. But unlike those models, we're seeking to amplify youth leadership. We want to be public from the beginning and partner with youth and non-youth actors to co-develop a lot of the work ahead. We're walking the talk by doing this. What this also means is that we may not have all the answers figured out, but we intend on figuring them out together over the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eliska. And I'm seeing that we have some questions as well. So probably now you have already got an understanding of what we are trying to do with this fund. So as Onkea had asked, how Search will be doing it differently through the YPS fund. So it's not that Search is going to do differently. It's all of us that we are going to do differently. It's a collective, multi-partner, independent fund, which will be having a governing board, and young people will also be contributing to it. But how we are going to reach out to grassroots organizations, the vision is that this YPS fund will be supporting majority of youth who are operating at these grassroots level, directly supporting them. And these groups we are targeting are going to be the organizations which are having annual budgets less than 10,000 USD. So supporting individuals and informal youth groups as well. And this is what I can see Joseph Jimmy was asking, how we are going to support formal and informal mechanisms. So yes, this is the vision, to support individuals and informal youth groups as well. So this is the first solution that YPS Fund is providing. Second solution that we are trying to provide is that it is not about short-term projects. It's about investing in the community over a long period of 5 to 10 years. So it's going to be a multi-year funding support that is going to be advancing youth peace and security and peace building context in the community. So we are going beyond that mentality of short-term time-bound projects. Of course, there can be multiple youth groups that can be supported over a period. So not that a single group will be supported throughout this 10-year period. But yes, that's the idea, not getting out of that community without seeing realistic change at the ground. And the third point that was asked was about formal structure at the global financing levels. So yes, there is going to be youth ownership in the decision-making process itself. So when we are talking about this youth ownership, it is the third solution that the Youth Peace and Security Fund is providing. Here, there will be a dissemination process, and that approach, which we are calling as Youth 360 approach, which will be having components of collaborative conflict analysis, then participatory grant making, and also providing intergenerational mentoring while implementing the support. So young people will be contributing at the governing level of the fund, but at the same time, there will be a component of participatory grant making while making the decision of where the fund should go. So this is where we are trying to transform this intergenerational dimension that we have, and we will be building upon that in the intergenerational dimension. These are the few things, but otherwise the pillar is trying to focus once again in 3 different ways. One, direct funding to youth-led groups. Second, adoption of a conflict geography. So not a political geography, but a conflict geography, and engaging in that community for 5 to 10 years. And at the same time, we realize that there need to be a backbone support for the YPS fund coordination. So for that also, this fund will be contributed. And this, like Elska mentioned, this is going to be a long-term journey, and we want all of us stakeholders, including young peace builders and partners, to be joining this initiative and really make it a multi-stakeholder initiative. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alishka and Mridul, and thank you so much for answering the questions that have come in from the audience today. What we realize is that we have many questions, but we also have many answers, and as a community, we can come together to answer these. And with that, I would sort of like to flush out more on what are the innovations of the YPS Fund, and I call upon Mena and Saji to do that for us, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khushbu, and thank you again to everybody for joining us today during this really historic launch. As all of the speakers have laid out what the problems are, what the barriers are, and how the YPS Fund is going to function, I think one thing that's really key here is that this isn't just another funding mechanism or group or innovative NGO type organization or system. This is a movement, and it's a movement of young people coming together saying enough is enough. Young people from Nigeria to the US, to Europe, to India, to Taiwan, all across the world saying we are done with the status quo of funding going only to those who can speak English, only to those who are registered as formal NGOs, and only to those who have access to high-level people and decision makers. So really, it's not about search for common ground. It's not about you know why. It's about you, and it's about us as a community and as a collective. And so as we fundraise and generate funding, it's really about small dollar donations that really builds that movement building mindset to change the way that young people build their own capacity with financing and funding each other's work. And so community is a really, really, really key part of this entire fund. And we really need to emphasize that this is everybody's fund and everybody's movement, not one organization or not another. And that's why this fund is innovative, and that's why this fund is going to change the status quo. And I think that every single answer that everyone has given attests to that in a different way, and everybody's perspective attests to that in a different way as well. Saji, if you have anything to add in terms of the innovative side of it.
There's nothing more I can say, actually. Mina did an amazing job to speak words into, very powerfully, and I only wanted to echo her sentiment. Fully agree. That's what it is about.
Thank you, Mina. The energy that you bring into this room is admirable, and that's exactly the kind of energy that we want to spread out through this fund to all the youth peace builder networks in the region and beyond. And with that, we would really love to open up the floor to more questions. We would love to engage via chat, but also if anybody would love to ask a question, unmute themselves and just connect with our panelists, we would love to hear what you have to say today. So if you could raise your hand, and then I could call upon you to unmute yourself. Yes, I see Issa. Issa, please unmute yourself, and you have the floor. Please also just limit your question to 1 minute or less, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I hope you can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon from Ghana. First of all, I would want to say that I'm very excited about this fund and learning about it. I'm very happy about it. Just a question. I just want to know basically how young peace builders can also contribute to this fund, so that it wouldn't be one way that this fund supports young peace builders, but what role can we equally play to support the sustainability of the fund?
That is a great question, Isa, and I'm so glad that you brought this up, because I think, as I was saying earlier, this fund is made by young people for young people. It's not program officers at Search for Common Ground or coordinators at You Know Why. We want you to be a part of co-creating, co-investing, co-shaping, and really sustaining the fund. And that's not just through contributing $1 or $2 a month or however much you can actually donate. We have a cohort of YPS ambassadors who many of you are on the call right now that are actively bringing up ideas and innovative ways to shape messaging around the fund, to determine who exactly is going to receive the funding. So it's going to be youth-led organizations, young people coming together saying that these groups are the ones that should be prioritized for the funding. And it's really going to be up to you. If you have ideas, if you have ways that you think the fund should be functioning, we want you to get involved and join us. And there's a number of ways you can do that. One is getting involved on social media. We are trying to get active. We are living in a translocal world. And so getting active on social media, raising your voice, highlighting issues that you are facing. Two, we are launching an online community, an online platform for all of us to collaboratively work together better across national boundaries and across the world to really incubate and join the community. I see Khushbu also sent a chat into the Facebook group. And then three, if you go onto the Youth Peace and Security Fund's webpage, there's direct actions that you can take to get involved. So one, of course, is contributing to the fund. Two is joining if you hit the join the community button, it will send you to a link where you can send us your information so that we can get you directly involved. So again, there's a number of ways to get involved, but at the same time, this is a new initiative and a new fund. So if you have ideas on how we can better engage young people, especially young people in hard to reach communities, we would love to collaborate with you and see what we can do to make this more inclusive and collaborative.
Thank you, Mina and Isa. Please do reach out to us and join the community through social media or through other channels. Thank you. We now have Solvia organization from Somalia. Please unmute yourself. Thank you. Hello. Hi.
Yes, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hussein Made from Somalia. Especially, I'm a representative to Somali Youth Volunteers Association, SOIVA, organization and operating in Somalia. We are very, very pleasure to attend this first meeting in the Global Youth Fund. We are very, very exciting. You know, in Somalia, we're located in Africa, especially East Africa. This is our pleasure to attend, and peace and security, youth empowerment, youth engagement, and youth fund and engagement society. You know, so youth is the backbone of the community. So we are very happy. We are very happy to attend this very, very, very delight meeting. So that we'll keep in touch. We are sharing you all our details and emails. So we'll keep in touch on behalf of Somali youth and women and who live in disability and minority group. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing from you. Next, we have Yahya.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Yahya Abzada from Afghanistan. And, I am the founder and president of Peacebuilders Social Welfare Organization in Afghanistan. And let me say a short about the Peacebuilders Social Organization in Afghanistan. We are at least, it is 10 years that we are working in peace process, peace building, and security. and also women empowerment. So happy to hear that by this or funding, or maybe this is a good opportunity for those community that is so poor, or maybe they needed to funding. I'm very happy to hear about this community, and now I have the same question. What requirements do we need to host, or maybe to get this fund to our community? Because as you know, Afghanistan is one of the backwarded country that needs this fund, and also this activity. So if there is a person who answered my question, I'm really happy to hear that.
Thank you so much, Yahya. Thank you. Next, I would like to call upon Michael Macare. You can unmute yourself and share your question. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you so much. And congratulations to Serge and to everyone who's part of this call today on the launch of this. I think it's a great testimony to where young peace builders are saying, we're not going to wait and have a pause button on the need to take action, and looking at the collective way that you are approaching how everybody can be an investor in peace and security, both those who are investing their time and talent on the front lines in your community, and those who may not be able to be working in those spaces, but want to contribute nonetheless. And I think, my hope is that across this broad coalition, people can be reaching out, and I know I will through my networks, to encourage people all around the world to think about how they're investing in the initiatives of young peace builders like this. I do think the points of Achaleke and Mena and others are really important, in that we're building that capacity for financial management and building towards that continuum of strengthening our youth-led peace-building organizations, so that it's easier for them to qualify for other forms of funding as well. It is a continuum, and we need to make that investment both in building the skills and the capacity for organizational management, financial management. There's some really great tools out there online that different organizations have been putting together, and hopefully we can share that. But more importantly, on the financial seed capital, this is a tremendous support. And I think there is an opportunity to encourage young leaders and students at universities and all sorts of people in different parts of the world to say, hey, I can make a donation of $22.50 or of whatever amount to help support, work that's being done on the front lines in Pakistan or in Somalia or in Guatemala or in whatever area where we have young peace builders. So thanks.
Saji Elishka, would you like to sort of respond to Michael's comments, please? Thank you.
I think the comments don't really need to responding to, but I would like to answer to Yaya's question, since we didn't get to that. So how can young people in Afghanistan and youth-led organizations join the fund? As I said, we're just launching this fund. We're starting the long road, and we're just starting to fundraise for this fund. So what we're doing now is bringing different stakeholders together, whether it's young individual people, youth-led organizations, youth groups, different types of donors, different types of adult partners and organizations. And we're creating a community where everyone brings their experiences, their expertise, but also brings kind of themselves, so that there can be this intergenerational dialogue happening, but also trust building. so that when after the 2 years, we can actually start disbursement of the funds. And there is no more questions whether non-registered youth groups or young people themselves are eligible or if they're trustworthy enough to receive that funding. So what we're asking now for you is to join.
Eliska, you just got muted. Would you like to finish your thought?
Yes, I don't know when I got muted, but yes. So as I was saying, what we're asking people to do is to join this growing community and to contribute with your ideas on how to shape the fund further, what would be the best way going forward. And just to remind you that if you join, you're gonna have a say in the different decisions that are taken. And we really want this to be youth-led, co-created, yes, fund. Yes, I think, given the time.
Thank you so much, Eliska. In the interest of time, we can take only 2 more questions. So Irene, you can unmute yourself, and after that, we can go to Agostino. Thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you very much, everyone. I will put also my video. Okay, so my name is Irene. I work at the UNESCO office for Central Africa based in Yaoundé, and I'm really glad to see all of your people. I'm really glad to meet you all. I know Christian because we work together, and I'm very much agree with what the whole thing you said. And what I agreed most is cooperate instead of be competitive against each other, because this is actually the whole point. And this is actually what drags a lot of youth-led organizations back, in the sense that in the race of funding, the problem becomes to exactly to be competitive one against the other, instead of, which is the whole mechanism behind the funding, of course, because it's a competitive process. So the youth organizations and the recipients in general, they are all brought to be competitive against one another, instead of productively cooperate and federate themselves and their engagement, their capacities, their knowledge for a common goal. So when I'm saying capacities and knowledge, I'm also saying mutually strengthening these capacities and knowledge, and joint forces when it comes, for example, to raise awareness and advocacy. For what concerns fundraising, I appreciate the ownership that you want young people to get for what concerns fundraising. It's not so challenging. For example, I come from Italy. In Europe, I know that it's not so challenging, the thinking of the logic of crowdfunding, in a way, so of contributing in a joint fund. It's going to be an exciting challenge and it's going to entail a lot of advocacy and awareness raising work throughout the youth-based organizations involved in this fund initially, for making understand starting from the same young people, that they are the first responsible for their development. So they don't have to rely on other people. They don't necessarily have to rely on other people, but they will be better off if they are brought to cooperate and to exactly take ownership of themselves, which is not exactly what concerning fundraising, which is not a mainstreamed logic, in a way, if you want to say that. So it would be a really exciting challenge on the advocacy and awareness raising level, at the national and local level, with the involvement of multiple stakeholders, as you were saying before. So thank you. It was more like a general remark. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Irene. And now I call upon Agustino to ask his question.
Yeah. Hello?
Oh, yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
Yes, please. Thank you so much for giving me the chance. I would first like to thank all the presenters for their good layout about this fund. I want to start from the issue of there is need of this capacity building on the issue of finance management, because most youth in these initiatives have always had issues with funds that are always put out because they don't have this capacity. Um, my question is, for a country like South Sudan that has been in conflict for the last 20 years, and when you look, such opportunity comes at the UN level, we as young people working at the grassroots don't even get this opportunity. After this money is brought in a country like this, you get it's being controlled by maybe UNDP, and the process of even awarding the funding to the young people doesn't even you get the international donors are the ones implementing. So my question is, how will this fund be different from other funds, though we talk of us being part of the fundraising? The question is, this fundraising might be taking place within the UN, uh, and we don't have structures maybe for funding to be made maybe regionally, maybe regionally, internationally. So how do we intend to fundraise this money, and how will this money reach the youth who really need it? Then it's getting into the hands of international donors, and they make it very hard for even the young people to get this funding. Thank you so much. I'm Agustino Deng from South Sudan.
Thank you for your powerful remarks, Agustino. And I would like to ask either Mina, Saji, or Elishka to unmute themselves and address the last two questions that we had.
Thank you, Agustino, for your really important question. I think one thing that's key here is that young people themselves, not elite young people, but all young people themselves who are co-shaping this fund will decide who the money goes to with one really key thing in mind, and that's prosperity. We know that young people cannot survive and function without basic needs met. And so the funds that are going to be distributed are going to prioritize young people who need the money the most, to survive, have prosperous lives, and be able to do their work to build peace in their communities. So with you and your community and your peers and organization joining our fund to help shape this, we can make sure that that's prioritized. And that's central to the philosophy of the fund and how funds will be distributed. So we really invite you to sign up on the link so that we can continue this conversation and make sure that the most hard to reach youth and the youth that need the money the most are the ones who are actively making these decisions and the ones who are shaping where this money is going to go, so that this fund does not turn into another status quo that is systemically excluding young people within hard to reach communities.
Thank you so much, Mina. Thank you for addressing the question. And with that, I would also like to give the closing remarks and summarize the key things that we sort of discussed today. So one, we discussed that it's really important to support young people. It's important to support them across all front lines, because young people are really the ones who are facing conflict, but who are also trying to move and mobilize for solutions. This is why the Youth Peace and Security Fund is important, because we are trying to democratize the fundraising landscape. We want to do that by building a community, and we want to do that by making sure that young people are involved from day one. To reiterate, this is the first day of the fund itself. We are launching today. We are starting from scratch. And this itself, in a way, is kind of revolutionary. And with that, I am very, very grateful for all of you for joining us today. Thank you for your time and your patience. We would love to stay back and also continue the conversation going in an informal way. So if you would like to stay back on the webinar, you're most welcome to. Otherwise, please do join the community on social media or reach out to us on the forms that have been sent to us. We will also send up a follow-up email after the webinar, and we really look forward to you attending future events and being a part of the community, which we have emphasized throughout. Thank you. Thank you so much. I see we have a couple of questions, and since we're opening up the floor, I would ask Mohammed if you could ask your question, please. We would love to continue the conversation. Everyone else is free to leave if you have other commitments, but please do stay in touch. Thank you. Hi, Mohammed, can you hear me? Do you have a question? Would you like to ask it?
Yes. Yes, I have a question. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Mohammed from Somalia, representing Somali Youth Volunteer Association. That is SAIVA. We are very pleased to be part of this launching, the pioneers of launching the youth fund. To add on the point of maybe asking for this fundraising drive is a very good initiative, because youth globally, this is a global activity, I think, the way it is being discussed. So youth globally, they don't have what you call a tribe. Someone suggested that this is intergenerational community driven, and youth are within that community. So my question is, most of the time, youth who are eligible for these funds are left behind due to maybe lack of information, awareness, or lack of the accessibility to the information. And my question is, after launching this fund, and then for the next 2 years, let's say we are going to focus on programmatic areas that we are going to support. So my first question is, what are the programmatic areas that this fund will going to focus on concerning youth development? And number two, what are the sustainability issues that are in place for these youth to continue serving its purpose? Thank you very much. Those are my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Elishka, Saji? Yes, okay, Elishka, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, for your question. So this fund has been launched to fund youth-led peace-building activities, where the intergenerational aspect that I've mentioned is about the community we're building, and especially the trust building aspect of the fund. So we're bringing together different types of donors, different types of international organizations, governments, and all sorts of youth-led organizations, groups, and individual young peace builders. The incubation period of 2 years that we've mentioned is really the time for us to figure out a lot of and to really shape a lot of the structural aspects of the fund. And we're by no means saying that the fund is complete. Search for Common Ground and why are going to provide support to the functioning of the Global Fund until it can be independently managed. So that is why we're giving ourselves this 2-year incubation period, during which all of you and even people who are not on the call today can come together and help us co-create this fund and to build this community. Saji, do you want to add something?
I think you have answered it. I think there is so the part of this is you've laid the foundation for this. Thank you, Elishka, and thank you, Mohammed, for the question as well. Collecting a lot of these questions together. This one is we are trying to shift the narrative from a competitive model to a collaborative model. What does this really mean? What it means is that we are trying to create a culture of collaboration where young people from different walks of life, youth groups, individuals, coming together, formal and informal, putting their best assets to bear to address the issues that they collectively identify as important. And instead of competing for a limited amount of money, we're going to invest in all of them for the activities that they collectively decide. And that's what we are trying to move into, is a culture of collaboration, because so that people working together will have a collective level impact and a collective level of pride in their work also. So that's a really fundamental thing. So when you asked about what types of projects, this moment is really hard to tell because we are not the ones who decide. This is about young people in the communities deciding what is important. And it starts with doing a joint conflict analysis, as Mirgo said earlier. The joint conflict analysis leads to an understanding of what is needed collectively and collectively creating a path for addressing it. So this is really at the heart of this model. The second is the sense of community that Meena talked about. This community is so critical for this. The fund is not about giving money. The power of the fund comes from the people in the community sharing each other's resources, helping each other grow, and see them as part of something greater than themselves. So this is why young people from Ghana to South Sudan to Pakistan to Afghanistan supporting each other in the skill tools they have, helping them out. So that way, this horizontal leadership model is shared even more and amplified even more. And the third is this idea that this fund is not about just young people helping each other. This is an opportunity to go beyond this competition that people face and invite donors who struggle to give money to young people, but yet want to do so. Join this movement, join this community, and use this community as a way to meet those needs. We know that it's very hard for organizations to break through their bureaucracy and get money into the hands of young people. This Youth Peace and Security Fund becomes a vehicle for that. So why reinvent the wheel when we can collaborate to do that? I think that's another way to think about collaboration, so that partners coming together, making something bigger happen is even much better for people. It's a win-win. So I really am grateful for the people who have contributed to the fund already. We're almost at $1,000 in just a couple of hours. We want to get to that 22,000 goal because it's symbolic. Symbolic because for the first time, the world recognized young people as partners with a resolution called Resolution 2250. And in honor of that resolution, our target in the next 3 months is 22,500. And if we can join us in matching that in the next week, then we can actually continue to expand and make sure that this money is used in the right way. So thank you for contributing, and please encourage your members, your networks to also contribute to this fund. And that's how this can happen. Otherwise, we are only going to depend on others. And we want to shift this narrative of young people as beneficiaries to young people as power holders, co-owners. And only that can happen with you. So we welcome you to join us in making this happen together.
Thank you so much. Very powerful words, Saji. I have received a question privately on chat, and the speaker chooses to be anonymous, so I will read it out and our panelists can answer it for them. The question is, how do we make sure that the young people joining the advisory boards and committees don't replicate the same mentality of donors and favor youth groups who know the rules of the funding game over the ones who don't? And I can look at Meena, Saji, Elishka, or any other panelists, Christine, perhaps Achalake, who would like to join in the conversation and answer the question.
I think once again, this question very much comes back to this mentality of competition for limited funding. What we want to do, there is no really, of course, well, the funding will never be unlimited. It will never be kind of young people to go about trying to access it, is not to think that because we don't have prior experience dealing with big donors, this fund will be inaccessible for us. But this fund is supposed to serve the youth groups and individuals who have not been served and who cannot access, for whatever reason, any other means of funding. So if you're afraid that you won't be able to thrive in this community that we're building because you don't have previous experience dealing with donors, don't worry about it. This is not going to be a replication of those type of relationships. What we are trying to set up is an environment where donors get to meet youth groups and youth organizations that work either on a completely voluntary basis or on a budget that is well beyond the $10,000 mark on an annual basis, so that those people who really cannot access funding will be able to access it. So you won't, I guess what I'm saying is you won't be competing with anyone, and the decisions about who gets to will be taken by the group and by those who are stakeholders in that particular geography.
I will, Eliška brought up a really good point, and I'll also add to that, that from the beginning, we want this to be inclusive. So inclusive means not just people from different geographies, but making sure that those people from different geographies and different countries and conflict contexts are people who can access this space of collaboration through different means. So we would love for you to get engaged to help us make this a more inclusive and enabling space, so that regardless of your gender, your socioeconomic status, your religious group, whatever identity it is that holds you back in your community, you will be able to access this fund and you will be able to join this community to make sure that that traditional status quo mentality does not come up again. And while this is a space for everybody to bring their ideas and thoughts, we want to just make sure that that mentality does not mainstream or push the funds direction and push the way that the funds are distributed. So to Eliška's points, making sure that it's local, it's run by local young people, and that young people are the ones who have decision-making power throughout the entire process from day one, like today.
Thank you, Eliška. Thank you, Mina. The speaker also thanks you for answering the question. Can we have Akkad's question next? Akkad Sarah, please. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity to speak in this platform. I'm Akkad Sarah from South Sudan, and I would just like to add on to what my brother Deng said earlier on. It's really very hard here in South Sudan for young people, organizations that are really in the grassroots to get the funding that are needed for the activities to continue. So I just hope this would really help us back here in South Sudan to get the necessary funds, because we all have the good ideas, we all have the necessary programs that can help our people in the grassroots. So I just wish you all the best in the process, and will always follow up with you people. And thank you so much. That's all I had to say. I have no questions because I've heard a lot from this platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We're so happy to have you join us today. I see a question from Abad. Abad, you can unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, yes, we can hear you.
Yes. This is there is some Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. This is one of the best initiative from this organization, and we will love to join this best initiative, and we will do our part as younger people, inshallah. So the things will any for the development of vulnerable community in our areas, as well as to because we are already working in marginalized community in Pakistan, so it will be very beneficial for us to help the people who are unable to took up the cause for their rights, like other things to do it, but we will do it for the people who are unheard. So this initiative would be beneficial for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abad. Thank you for your question and comment. I feel with that, we have come to the end of this webinar today. And I'm really grateful for all of you who have stuck back and who have sort of contributed to the conversation in the chat and also otherwise. And we really look forward to having you to our future events and webinars. And thank you so much for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to contact either me or Saji or Khushbu. I think we can stop recording.